I just reached this moment where all the rage that I had kept inside for so long just like
For
comes out.
years.
I'm on the
Mm,
brakes and I turn around and I, yelled, shut up and all the other things that I kept inside for 5 years, maybe 35. And, all the things that I said I would never say.
yeah.
I heard, my mom come out of my mouth. I felt this feeling of like guttural, uncontrollable rage come out
Mm,
of me that terrified even me.
mm,
I have this shiny facade, beautiful on the outside, the white picket fence. I got the husband, I got the kids, I got the matching outfits. We ordered the
mm,
holiday cards to send to people. Like everything looks like it's okay. And my life looks on the outside like it's vastly different. Inside, I am absolutely shattered. I don't love motherhood. I want to escape. I want to get away. I want a new life. I can't do this anymore. I'm not okay. And I don't know what to do about it. I had my second born and everything just completely changed. I mean, his needs were he just cried
mm.
all of the time. And I became incredibly sleep deprived, incredibly
Yeah.
worn. The overstimulation, the overwhelm, the lack of having any of my needs met for days and weeks and then months on end. And it just like stripped me of any capacity. And I went from someone who was, happy and managing things to someone who I was just resentful towards everyone
Mm.
in my life.
Failure is like everything else in life, it's just between.
Never fail.
I need to know to get to where I want to go.
Libby, welcome to the Feck It No More show.
Thanks so much for having me.
No, thank you so much for being here today. Libby, would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Libby Ward. I'm a mom of two. I'm happily married and I live in Ontario, Canada. My husband is a police officer and I create content about motherhood and mental health and breaking cycles of trauma because I struggled in motherhood very deeply in my early years of motherhood and it felt like nobody else was talking about it. So now my mission is really to change the narrative of motherhood because I know that I needed to prioritize myself and take care of myself and look at my inner world in order to show up as the mom I wanted to be and the person I wanted to be. And so that is what I do now.
Excellent. I had come across your content, Libby, and it really stood out to me for a couple of reasons. This show's very much about those moments where we say enough's enough and something must change, that feck it no more moment. And I could tell from your content that you've had a couple of them now. Whenever we reached out, you kindly said that you would come on and share them those moments, and thank you so much for that. For our listeners listening, would you like to start before the feck it no more moments, or would you like to start with the feck it no more
I
moments?
think it makes sense to start before
Okay.
to get some of the back history.
What was life like then before the feck it no more moments? Tell me what was going on.
So I would have to rewind back at some point in the story to give you the full context of what life was really like.
Perfect.
So before my first, shall I say feck it? Do I say?
Let's go with it.
Okay. We have different accents. I'm like, what do I call it? Before my moment, I would say if you knew me from the outside, you would look and say, Libby is a great mom. She shows up to church on Sunday in matching outfits with her kids. She cooks home cooked meals. Her hair is always done. Her makeup's done. On Facebook, her family pictures look great. She loves her husband. Her house is clean. Her lawn is cut. She seems to be doing really great and loves her children and is a great mom. And inside, that is not what it felt like. I had a toddler, a 2-year-old, and a newborn who my second was very different to how my firstborn was. He had a lot of higher needs, was highly sensitive, struggled to eat. And because he didn't eat, he cried a lot. He also didn't sleep. And because he didn't sleep, I didn't sleep. And I was sleep deprived. And I was still trying to spin all the plates.
Juggle everything.
I was the primary parent. I was the default parent. My husband was a shift worker. He was gone at work a lot of the time or recovering from work by sleeping because he worked a lot of night shifts. And so really the load was on my shoulders. And I was somebody who's really independent. I didn't ask for help a lot. I didn't lean on other people a lot. I'd learned very early that I was the one who I could rely on. And so I did those things. And it was really important to me to both be a good mom, to show up for my kids, regulated and, happy and like in a loving way, and also to be perceived as a good mom. Because I grew up in not the greatest circumstances, and I've felt a lot of shame about how our family was perceived, what our house looked like, what my mom was like, how we were treated. And I really wanted to give my kids a different life. And also for people to know that I had sort of made it, that I was okay, that I was a good mom, that I had broken the cycle, that kind of thing. And the pressure that I put on myself to both be a good mom and make it look like I was being a good mom. And I didn't differentiate those at the time, I will say. Now
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it's those two things. But at the time, I just was like, I'm going to do all the things. I didn't know the line between neglect and overcompensation. So overcompensation
Mm.
was my norm. And so it looked like I was doing everything really well, but I was deeply struggling inside, had a lot of shame, a lot of low self-worth. I was exhausted. I was resentful. I was starting to
Mm.
become angry at the people around me for needing me. I was caring for my mom a lot. My parents were separated. Both of them were disabled. And I had a pretty codependent relationship with my mom where I would take her grocery shopping. I would care for her. And so even though I had two young children, I was still very much attuned to her needs and everybody else's needs
Yeah.
around me rather than my own. If I rewound more, I would say that I grew up in a really turbulent household and things were
Mm.
really unstable. And looking back, I can see how that created in me this need to be very self-reliant. And,
Mm.
I moved 18 times before I was 18 years old. I was raised by a single mom with undiagnosed, untreated mental health disorders. And so that taught me very early on that it was my job to walk into a room and assess what everybody else needs first in
Mm.
order to stay safe and feel safe. I was put in charge of things that most kids weren't put in charge of. And so I grew up really, really quickly. And
Yeah.
for a long time, that made me feel capable and it made me
Mm.
feel resilient and it made me feel like I can do it all. And I could do a lot of things. And it wasn't until motherhood and the load of motherhood came that my coping mechanisms and the things that I developed out of survival and childhood sort of hit me in the face. I am not doing okay. I don't really know why, but everybody else thinks that I'm nailing it.
Yeah. That's not an uncommon theme from our guests that have been on the show so far, Libby, by any stretch of the imagination, where people feel like they have to put on the show to people as well because they don't want to let people know that they're struggling. It sounds like a very similar story to my own upbringing in terms of a house with one parent. Definitely, in my case, it was alcoholism, but definitely mental health issues now looking back on it too, that caused a lot of chaos in the house. And it
Mhm.
meant that I suppose I was always very conscious of what other people were thinking and
Yeah.
how they were seeing us from the outside. So you had to put on a type of a show. Now, I had a lot of negative stories in my own head surrounding that as well. Can you explain what was kind of going on internally for our listeners kind of during that period whenever you're growing up in that space? What did that look like in your head for you?
I mean, the way it was very normal to me, the
Mm.
way I was growing up. I mean, I could see how other families were existing and that ours was
Yeah.
different, but I didn't actually know what that felt like. I
Mm.
knew that what I felt inside was a desire to make everything okay for everybody else. So if we were
Okay.
behind on the bills, okay,
Mm.
how can I help? Oh, we'll have a yard sale on a Tuesday morning while everyone's
Yeah.
up. We'll stay home. I'll have my brother cart out our furniture and plates and knives and forks and we'll try and sell them. Or, oh, let's
Yeah.
take all off the couch and let's find some money.
Yeah.
So there was trying to help, financially, but then, being raised by a single mother who didn't always have other adults to rely on, being the eldest daughter, I became the person that my mom relied on. And so I actually, when I look back, and I think about, my 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old self, I
Yeah.
had a lot of pride actually for
Okay.
my ability to comfort my mom, to
Yeah.
be her person, to be her friend, to be reliable. I remember going to the grocery store when I was like, 9, 10 years old and doing the family grocery shop and feeling like, oh, like I can do this. Like other kids
Remember
can't do
growing up.
it. I
Yeah.
can. So there was a period of time when I felt really good about the fact that I could
Yeah.
calm a room, that I could anticipate, okay, if mom is walking into the room and that is the sound of her footsteps and that is the pace of her breath, that means something's not okay. So
Yeah.
what can I do to be extra sweet to make sure that she is okay? And she doesn't even
Mhm.
need to say, do
Yeah.
X, Y, Z. I immediately know that that is my
So you're
job.
preempting it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just became incredible at attuning to the needs and
Mhm.
emotions of people and anticipating needs,
Yeah.
and felt in my body pretty good until my teenage years.
Yeah.
My mom met a man and married him, and we left the city that we were living in, and we moved to a farm, a hobby farm, away from everyone and everything I'd known. And I wasn't allowed to talk to my biological dad anymore. And
Yeah.
that period of time at that farm was pretty psychologically abusive.
Yeah.
There was a lot, there was a lot of things that went on that were entirely out of my control, and I still felt like I wanted to fix and help and all of those things,
Yeah.
but my mom was sort of away and with this, with her husband now, and I didn't really have that in anymore. And so I felt
Yeah.
this constant sense of I need to make them happy. I never
Mm.
feel like good enough. I'm doing the farm chores, I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm being the adult here, and yet it's not good enough. And,
Mm.
there was a lot of sort of like psychological back and forth, and that didn't feel good. And I
Yeah.
became pretty just on edge and just never wanted to be at home and wanted to escape a lot. And so there was sort of different phases, I think, because we
Yeah.
moved, there was different circumstances everywhere we went. But no matter
Mm.
what the circumstances were, it wasn't even a conscious knowing. It was like a bodily knowing that like your job is to make sure everyone's okay.
That's
And that
interesting. I can totally resonate with that. I was the second one, so my older sister in the house certainly would have been a lot more independent. I was kind of somebody that felt I had to be the man in the house. I had to be there for my mum whenever things went wrong. I had to make sure that I was putting on a good brave
yeah.
face. However, inside I was very insecure, very shy, very thinking that I wasn't good enough to actually be able to make a difference. So I had a lot of negative internal stories for a long part of my life. And I suppose that you getting to them different phases, I can see how that change in circumstances and environment has impacted you differently.
I mean,
Moving,
I will say that like my self-worth was very low, and everything I
okay,
did was attempt to feel okay. I mean, my self-esteem was, under the floor.
yeah,
Especially once I entered my teen years, I was filled with so much shame inside. I
yeah,
mean, I was on the bus. I had a 1-hour bus ride to school every day, and I was bullied horrendously.
mm,
We weren't taught a lot of like personal hygiene or social
yeah,
skills, and so
yeah,
school was hell. And then I would come home, and that was hell. And I felt like I was never quite good enough, no matter what
yeah,
I did. And it became my like almost my number one job to show everyone that I was normal and just like them. And the
yeah.
work it took to appear like I had
Mm.
everything together. Looking back was exhausting and was a coping mechanism.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand that and resonate with that. So how long are you on the farm? When do you kind of transition into your feck it no more moment?
Long
Or
story short, I actually met my husband when I was a teenager. We were working as camp counselors. He was from England. He was just coming for the summer to work at a camp in Canada. We met. We became friends. We were friends for a couple of years. He came back each summer for a few years, and we started dating. And I moved to England when I was 19. Things
Mm,
became really, really troublesome at home. And my husband's, well, boyfriend at the time, his visa in Canada was running up. He said, "Hey, why don't you come to England? I'm going back home." And so I said, "Sure." And so I did. And I sort of like fell into like the loving, warm embrace of his,
mm,
family home where he had lived in the same house his whole life with his, parents who both had two stable jobs, and
yeah,
gave them the sort of like run of the road middle class life in England, and sort of watched like a hawk of like, what do
mm,
normal people do? Oh, we sit at the table and we eat.
yeah,
Okay. Um, oh, we listen when each other talk. Oh, wait, no
mm,
one's yelling. Why isn't anybody yelling?
mm,
What with that? And so it was very fascinating for me to watch how they lived. And I became like a sponge to, okay,
yeah,
no longer at home. What does it look like to be a quote unquote normal person? And then when we got married, moved back to Canada a couple of years later, and I got, involved with my church again. And I very much looked to the women there. I will say in my late teens is when I
mm,
sort of, started going to a youth group, and that was a stability that I found that I hadn't had anywhere else. And I
mm,
had a sense of belonging and care and love from the people there that I hadn't really experienced anywhere else. And so I
before,
latched
yeah,
on to that. And so I went through a series from my late teens until motherhood of latching
mm,
on to anyone and anything that seemed remotely normal. Okay, here's
normal.
these church people. Okay, what does moral look like? What does
Mhm,
stable look like? What structure can I put around myself, because I haven't had that anywhere else? And then
yeah,
I, moved in with my boyfriend's family. What can I do? What can I learn from them? How do you fold your sheets? How do you take care of a home? What does that look like? And when we moved back to Canada, I got involved with the church again. And place where we were going, it was very normal to have children very young. And
yeah,
so when I got pregnant at 26, even though compared to a lot of places these days, 26 is pretty young to become a
yeah,
mom. In my particular subculture, I was one of the older ones to have their first.
mhm,
And motherhood was very much seen as sort of this like highest calling, that like
mm,
the best thing you can do as a woman is have children, and even better if you can have more of them.
yeah,
And it was very normal to sort of, give up your work to raise kids, to homeschool, to do that. And I knew that I didn't want to homeschool, and I knew that like a homesteading or alternative life wasn't for me. But I did see these women as like loving and
Yeah.
kind and patient and selfish, or not selfish, selfless. I
Yes.
saw them as like selfless. Like they truly seemed to really love giving to
Mm.
their
Being a
children
mother.
and being a very like maternal person. And I thought, well, I'm not maternal, but if I spend enough time around these people, maybe I will be.
Mm.
And I tell a story that I like to call baby parades. We didn't actually call these things baby parades, but I tell this story because it sort of like shows how I perceived motherhood when I was,
Mm.
when I was pregnant and before I became pregnant and then was pregnant. Church I was going to, whenever a new baby would arrive at church, the pastor would be like, "Oh, baby so and so is here," and the family would come and like sort of parade their baby up and down the
Mm.
aisles, or, like smile and clap and like amazing, hooray, congratulations, and they would like celebrate
Yeah.
mothers. And I remember being pregnant and people being like, "Wow, like you, like how are you? How are you doing?" Like treated me like I was valuable and important and cared for. And I thought, wow, like motherhood. I'm here looking for the answer, and it seems like motherhood might be it. And I'm like really excited to become a mom and to do this. So I became a mom and loved my baby from the very first breath, and thought, I am going to be everything that I never had. I'm going to give you everything I never
Yeah.
had. I'm going to show up in the ways that I was never shown up for. And I will look to all the women in my life who I perceive as normal and who have it together, and I will do that in
Learn off
order to
it.
be that
Yeah.
person, because I don't know what it actually looks like. And, in that first year of motherhood, and I say this now, I performed motherhood pretty well. Like breastfeeding worked out, and I would like breastfeed her in the wrap while I was cleaning with, muffins baking in the oven. And
Mm.
like our lawn was cut. And like, even though my husband was at work all the time, like I just had it together and like, oh, I'm
Everything
actually
under control.
doing pretty okay. Like I am in control of
Mm.
everything. And, my best friend, they were in a different financial situation to us. They had a lot more security that way. She had support from her parents. A lot of the women I looked up to, they also had support, and they had, different things, different resources available to them.
Yeah.
But I didn't look at that. I just thought, I'm gonna get the things you get and be like you, and do the thing. And I felt pretty good about the fact that I was doing that, because I was like, why
Mm.
couldn't my mom do these things? Why couldn't,
Yeah. Why
you
wasn't
just
my life like this?
why wasn't it like this? And then I had my second born, and everything just completely changed. I mean,
Mm.
his needs were he just cried
Mm.
all of the time, and I became incredibly sleep deprived,
Yeah.
incredibly worn out. The overstimulation, the overwhelm, the lack of having any of my needs met for days and weeks and then months on end. And it just like stripped me of any capacity. And I went from someone who was, happy and managing things, to someone who I I I was just resentful towards
Mm.
everyone in my life.
Yeah. Do you think was it that chaos, that lack of control that had a big impact on that, Libby? The fact that for so long you were kind of on top of things and you were pushing
I
yourself to be in control?
I think control is a piece of it. At the time, I wouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
But definitely there's like control of the perception of me.
Yeah.
And then there's control of my environment. Okay, if things look like they're in the right place,
Yeah.
and everything looks like it's okay, then I feel okay. And there is a sense of control. And then all of a sudden, you have this baby who you cannot control
Mm.
anything. And then it's not
On
just
their
that
schedule,
you can't control this baby. Now, because you're exhausted, you can't control
mm,
your home, and you can't control
everything else. Yeah.
everything sort of crumbles. And then, okay, so then what does that mean about me? If
Mm.
I only have worth and value when I'm in control and can keep
Mm.
everyone happy, then the opposite must be true, that when I'm not in control and can't keep everyone happy, then I
Yeah.
must be worthless.
Yeah. So your self-worth was very much tied to that, being able to make everybody else happy around you and being on top of things. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and productivity and that kind of
Mm.
thing. And I mean, once, and we can go into the moments where I kind of broke, but once I started to do the deep work, I realized it was also it's control, but control at the end of the day is a tool
Mm.
to belong and connect, which is
To get you to where you want to go to. Yeah.
our most core need. And if I'm not in
Mm.
control and people perceive me this way, and then I don't belong anymore and I'm not connected
Yeah.
anymore, then I'm alone, and then
Big
that's
part.
not safe.
Yeah, I totally agree. It sounds like, and I hope my firstborn Amy isn't listening to this at some
Yeah.
point, because she is. We mentioned of her going through 2 hours of sleeping. It is her first child. It sounds like it was quite a challenging time for you. at a time where you had been thrown into that chaos with the second child. How was everybody else around you reacting or responding to it? Was that coming into your thoughts at that time, or were you very much just trying to focus on surviving and getting through every day?
I mean, if we're at the timeline of a toddler and a newborn, everyone else was just acting like it was normal. I mean, I remember when I had my first, everyone swoops in with care. They drop off
Yeah.
meals, or, there's a little bit more help. And then with your second, it's like, oh, people assume you've got it.
She
Um,
understands.
and I didn't necessarily have it. And also I
Yeah.
had this buildup as well, like I said, so my mom, um, she didn't work, she didn't
Yeah.
drive, and we were in a very codependent, enmeshed emotional relationship, and so I was
Mhm.
constantly at her beck and call. So it wasn't like, a lot of the moms I knew, they were very reliant on their parents. Their
Yeah.
parents helped
We're very
them.
supportive. Yeah.
Besides, I had, my husband's, mom lived in England, dad had just
Mhm.
been remarried in Canada. My dad was disabled, didn't drive, I didn't see
Yeah.
him. And I saw my mom often, but the support was the other way around, where I would have
Mm.
to interrupt my kids'
Support your
nap
mother.
time, to
Yeah.
buckle them in the car, to drive to mom's place, to take her to the grocery store, to listen to my son cry in the car, and
Yeah.
then to try and feed him in the front seat of the car, and then him not feed, and then
Mm.
him cry, and then my daughter cry because he's crying, and then my mom get mad that I'm not listening to her questions because she feels like she's alone, and I am managing everybody else's emotions,
Yeah. Around
and
you.
I am snapping at my children because I'm stressed for my mom, but I'm not actually making the connection in
Mm.
that moment, and then I get home and I'm absolutely shattered, and then I
Yeah.
still continue to be a parent and show up emotionally regulated for the moments all the moments alone until, my husband gets home at 9 o'clock that night and crashes,
Yeah.
and so it
Yeah.
was like Groundhog Day, day after day after day. "What do you need? What 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 do you need?" Never once stopping to say, "What do I need?"
What do I
And
need?
people around me acted like that was normal because I acted like it was normal.
Um,
I wasn't
mm.
in a place where I was able to say to my husband, "Hey, something needs to change. I need
Yeah.
you to XYZ. I know you have to work tomorrow, but I also have to parent our children tomorrow. Can you do one of the night wake ups?
Yeah.
Can you do
Yeah.
more night wake ups?" I wasn't in a place where I was saying to my friends, "I need help,"
Mm.
because I I wasn't in that place yet. I
You'd never
hadn't.
been there before. Yeah. It was new to you. Yeah.
So, my brother, my mom, everyone in my life acted like I was the maternal figure who had it
In
handled,
control. Yeah. Yeah.
because that's how I acted.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what they seen. That's what they
That's all.
understood was happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can understand that completely. And it's, as I say, it's having worked with so many people over the last few years, it is a very common theme where people don't want to show that they're maybe struggling and maybe need some help and support in a certain area. Can we jump to your first Feck It No More moment? Because it sounds like it's getting close. I can tell from even just the story that you're going through at the minute, we're getting close to it. What happened? What does it look like?
Yeah. So the first one, because I kind of have two big ones. My first one was, it was a Christmas season. I had, 2-year-old, 5-month-old. We had just moved towns, and I was still running a volunteer organization called the Shoebox Project. And the Shoebox
Yeah.
Project was something where we would collect new gifts for women who were unhoused or at risk of being unhoused, and we
Yeah.
would put them in nicely decorated shoeboxes and then deliver them to shelters and mental health organizations before the holidays. And
Yeah.
so, me being the person that I was, of course, I decided I was still going to run this organization while I had a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old, and we just moved, and I
Everything
had
else
no
going on.
system because why not? And my mother-in-law came from England to visit, and I thought, well, what better time to use this only childcare that we've had in the last 6 months than to go and volunteer
Yeah.
in the typical over-functioning Libby fashion. And so I went to this shoebox packing party that I had planned, and those 50 volunteers, and we packed hundreds of shoeboxes worth of like beautiful gifts, wrapped them in wrapping paper. And the lids and the bottom of the shoebox and the top have to be separate so that you can like open them up and
Yeah.
inspect them before they get delivered. Da 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 da. And so I realized while I'm at this party, like I am absolutely exhausted. This is not the self care I needed, but here we are. And so we pack the shoeboxes once it's done into the back of the car, in the back of my SUV. I drive home. It's like near midnight when I get home. It's absolutely freezing out. I am exhausted. I am worn out. I'm resentful towards the volunteers who came. I'm resentful towards just my husband for getting to have a life outside of parenthood. I'm resentful toward, like everyone. And I can
Everybody.
feel it building. And I pull into the driveway and I open the back of the SUV to start unloading them into the garage. And a bunch of them tumble out and the lids, popped off and
Yeah.
these gifts smash all over the ground. And I go back behind the SUV and I just start cleaning it up and putting them in. And I have this moment where I'm like, I I am this shoebox. Like,
Mm,
I have this shiny facade, beautiful on the outside, the white picket fence. I got the husband. I got the kids. I got the matching outfits. We ordered the
mm,
holiday cards to send people. Like, everything looks like it's okay. And my life looks on the outside like it's vastly different than my life looked
mm.
as a child.
On the inside.
Inside, I am absolutely shattered. I don't love motherhood. I want to escape. I want to get away. I want a new life. I can't do this anymore. I'm not okay, and I don't know what to do about it. And what
Mm,
is the point in having the pretty shoebox if what's inside is absolutely broken? And that was the first moment that I was honest with myself. I was
mm.
honest with myself about the fact that I was not okay. I
Yeah.
couldn't do it all, and I needed help. And that was sort of like the
Mm,
limit to my understanding of what was happening, but that was
yeah.
I'm not okay right now.
Mm. Whenever you reach that moment, and I've seen different versions of everybody getting to that moment over the years, and even for my own moments, how do you process what comes next during that moment? So you've understood that things aren't what they seem to
Mhm.
be, that you're struggling, you need help, that things must change, or maybe you didn't realize things must change, that you probably was more a case of, I can't continue like this.
Mhm.
But what does that look like for you at the time? What's the next immediate future look like in that scenario?
Well, I mean, I was afraid, I was afraid that if I admitted that I needed help, what would that mean? And what
Mm,
is the domino effect of that? And what are people gonna think and all of that? I didn't really know what was next, but I remember talking to a friend and, she encouraged me to see someone. And so I went to the doctor who then said, it could be postpartum depression, maybe go see a
yeah.
therapist. I thought, I'm not depressed.
Mm,
Depressed people are sad. Depressed moms, moms with postpartum depression, what I had seen is, they lie on the couch eating bonbons, crying, incapable of caring for their children, incapable of
yeah.
dressing them and feeding them and showing up in a loving way. I was doing those things. I was taking
Yeah.
them to the library. I was putting them to bed lovingly. I was reading them books. I was feeding them. I was doing all the things, but with a rage inside of me.
Mm,
And I thought, I'm not sad, I'm mad. And
mm,
so I went to the therapist, and in my first session, I explained all of this to her, and she said, "Do you always feel bad about feeling bad? Is that something you always feel bad about?" Because I had said, like, I'm angry at everyone, and most of all, I'm angry at myself.
for being mad.
I'm mad at myself for being the type of mom who's angry. I'm mad at myself for not loving motherhood. What kind of mother
Yeah.
thinks that?
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, of course, like, everyone feels bad about feeling bad." And
Mm,
she was like, "No, actually, you're allowed to feel anger. Like, you're
mm,
allowed to feel sadness. Those things don't make you a bad mom. Those things don't
yeah.
make you incapable. Two things can be true,
Mm,
and actually admitting that you have anger gives you information, and admitting
yeah.
that yourself gives you information, and what would happen if you let yourself be angry."
Mm,
And so the way I processed that was that I thought, "Well, okay, I'm I did the therapy thing." I went
mm,
home and I let myself be angry, and, it sort of, like, loosened things a little bit. And I kinda thought, "Okay, I'll do this therapy for a bit. I'll get over the postpartum depression. I'll check the box. Therapy
Take it,
done."
move
And then
on.
and then I can get back to spinning all the plates like I've
Yeah.
always done. Like, that's the goal, right? The goal is to get back to being a functioning person who loves life. And if that's the goal, then check, I've done therapy. We'll do this for a bit. And I
Mm,
just want to get back to feeling like I used to feel, which was capable and worthy.
yeah.
And so I went to therapy for a while and, learned about boundaries for the first time and, started to unpack some things about my childhood. But meanwhile, and this is what people don't talk about enough, like, I am still having to do the minutia of motherhood every
Mm,
moment of the day. I am not, taking I'm not some executive being like, "I'm gonna go and take 3 months off my mental health and work on me."
yeah.
It's no, I every day, I am waking up at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, trying to feed my kids, trying to get through every moment of the day where I'm needed every
Mm,
second, while also being like, "Wait, why why does my, pulse spike when I get a text from my mom? Oh, wait a
mm,
second. Why can't I tell my husband that I need some time alone when he gets home from work?
yeah.
Why? Like, I'm trying to navigate, like, why am I like this while also just trying to get things done?
Get
And
through it. Yeah.
something we don't really talk about for like parents who are in the trenches and need it every day, trying to figure out, oh, how do I change while just trying to get through the day was
Yeah.
really, really hard. And so I had some small improvements, but it
Mm.
was really like a one step forward, two steps back.
That process of change for anybody that has got the time to focus on it and put energy into it is challenging enough, because we've got habits, we've got behaviors that have been built into us for years. But to try and do it whenever you've got so much going on in your life and the two young kids would have been hugely challenging, Libby.
Yeah. Yeah, it
The-
was.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt. How long does that process go for?
How long does the process go for? I say for the next 3 years, I am trying to lower my expectations of myself. I'm
Yep.
trying to set boundaries with my mom. I am trying to not take on everything.
Yeah.
But the load of parenthood is also growing and changing constantly, where my son, who didn't breastfeed and then struggled to bottle feed and then struggled when we introduced solid food, then became a child who was extremely food averse. And it became so hard to even figure out what to feed him each day. And then at the same time, we realized, wait, he's 2, he hasn't said a word yet. Oh, wait, he's 2.5, he hasn't said a word yet. Oh, wait a second, he seems highly sensitive to sound, to light, to to the world, to everything around him. And then I have to become hyper vigilant to figure out, okay, well, if
What's
we're
going
going to
on?
anticipate his needs, I have to
Yeah.
communicate for him. I'm teaching him sign language. I'm bringing him to speech therapy 3 times a week. I'm communicating to everybody around us what he needs. I'm
Yeah.
trying boundaries with my mom, but because this is the first time I'm doing it in my life, I'm getting a lot of pushback, and energy
Yeah.
it takes to figure out how to be separate is exhausting me. And I'm trying to show up for my kids. And, my husband then had been a shift worker for 4 or 5 years, and
Yeah.
that took a toll on. I am thinking about everything for this household and these kids all day, every day while I'm working. And, so that it went on. So it was for, 3, 4 years where I'm trying to take care of myself. I'm
Yeah.
trying to make some time for myself, but it just feels impossible amongst everything else that I'm needed for. Um, my kids were about 3 and 5, and it was one of those particularly stressful mornings, and any parent listening to this will know the kind of mornings I'm talking about, where
Yeah.
nothing's going right. Somebody has peed the bed, somebody else is, upset about the color, of their clothes.
Yeah.
My son, he needed something. He was nearly 3, and I was trying to understand what he was saying, but his speech was still extremely
Yeah.
unclear. He couldn't say full words, and so I picked him up and tried to understand. He slapped me in the face, and I didn't slap him back, but I could feel this, rage building in me. And, I
Yeah.
tried to feed them breakfast, and they refused their breakfast, and it was winter in Canada, which means they had boots and hats and coats and mitts and the whole thing, trying to get out the door to drop 1 at daycare, 1 at school, get me to work on time. The babysitter for after school cancels. Everything's going wrong. Meanwhile, my husband is sleeping because he worked a night shift. And I tell people at this stage of my life, my name might as well have been like, shh, daddy's sleeping, because it felt like that's all I said. So I'm
Always say
trying to chaos of a morning while keeping my toddlers
quiet.
quiet, which is literally impossible. And,
Yeah.
I feel it building, and we get in the car, and I hand them each a granola bar, say, like, "This is your breakfast. You refuse your breakfast. Just eat this on the way. I just need you to be quiet for 5 minutes so mommy can make a phone call." We pull out of the driveway, and lo and behold, my son starts crying because he needs something, and I can't understand what he's saying, and I can't turn around because I don't wanna drive into oncoming traffic. I don't know if he's signing, I don't know what's happening, but I'm just, "Wait a minute, mommy's making a call," and my daughter starts kicking my seat, and it's all building. I finally hang up the phone, and it's continuing, and I just reach this moment where all the rage that I had kept inside for so long just,
For
comes out.
years.
Slam on the brakes, and I turn around, and I, yelled, "Shut up," and all the other things that I'd kept inside for 5 years, maybe 35 years. And, all the things that I said I would never say.
Yeah.
I heard, my mom come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I felt this feeling of, guttural, uncontrollable rage come out of me that terrified even me. And it was
Yeah.
that, loss of control of my own emotions. And I remember when I was done, I turned around and I looked at them, and I had seen them be afraid before, right? Anyone with kids, you've seen your kids be afraid, whether it's of the dark or of a stranger,
Yeah.
or, something in the corner. I had never seen that fear of me.
Because of you. Yeah.
And that look, that fear is something that I had spent my entire parenthood trying to
Avoid.
avoid. Everything I did was about not being that person.
Yeah.
Everything I did was about giving them what I didn't have and making them feel safe and loved, and like I was the parent, and I,
Mm.
helped them, and I made them feel safe, and I,
Yeah.
would be the person. And so seeing that fear of me was a moment I'll never forget. And
Mm.
I don't know that it's the first time I ever raised my voice, or it definitely wasn't the last time, but it was one of the biggest and most memorable moments where I thought, "I can't. This
It's
is
the
not
one
who
that
I
stood
wanna
out.
be. This is not the
Mm.
mom that I plan to be, that I want to be, that I and now that I've done this, where does it stop?" You know?
Mm.
That feeling of like, "Oh my goodness, if I let it out now, am I just always gonna let it like, what is happening?"
Yeah.
And the question I asked myself is, "What is wrong with me?"
Mm.
And so the kids were afraid, we're in the car, I calmed down and I said, "I'm really sorry." I'm still sort of, like, tingling, and my son hands me his granola bar, and he just signs open, gives me the sign
Mm.
language for open, and it just crushed me,
Mm.
that crushing feeling of, "You just it's my job
That's
to
all
meet
he
you.
wanted. Mm.
That's all you wanted. It's all you
Mm.
wanted, and now you are afraid of me."
Mm.
And, that is something that I carried a lot of shame for a long
Mm.
time, and that is the thing that made me go, "Okay, I need to figure out now, like, something really needs to change, like, this
Yeah.
is enough is enough." And,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't just yell 'cause I was overstimulated. I didn't yell 'cause they did something wrong. I wasn't yelling just 'cause I was stressed about getting to work.
Mm.
It wasn't one reason. I
It was
realized into
accumulation of everything.
accumulation of so many things, and, okay, so what do I need to do differently to get the capacity to deal with the stress that will inevitably happen
Yeah.
as a parent? Yeah.
It's a story that totally I can identify with, because I can remember lying in a bed, hearing the arguments with my father, swearing that I would never raise my voice or kind of be that person from a
Yeah.
young age. And then fast forward a few years, where you have got kids, stress of everything's going on, and that person seems to come out even though you said things. So it's something that I totally resonate with, Libby, and I totally understand how devastating you would have felt at that stage. Because to say that I'll never be that person, and then to see a little glimpse, now it doesn't make you that person, but to see that little glimpse is quite terrifying, from my
Mhm.
experience. How do you process that at the time? I'm guessing you get to your destination. What's the next few hours, like days, like in that
Mhm.
space?
Mhm. I mean, there was, like, the full body shame of, like, "Who
Mm.
am I? What does this mean about me? How do I change? Have I traumatized them forever?
Mm.
Will they ever trust me again?" A lot of the, like, downward spiral.
Yeah.
Um, and I just remember thinking, I don't want to be this kind of mom. I
Mm.
wanna be the kind of mom that makes her kids feel safe, and
Yeah.
also, I'm absolutely exhausted, and I've been
Being
trying, so what do I it's not like I'm not trying, so what do I do?
mm.
And, in the coming I made a therapy appointment, went back to the therapist, and, they, recommended some books on trauma,
Yeah.
and I entered this phase of, I am gonna learn everything I can learn about who I am and how I am so that I can figure out how to be different.
I did be there.
Um, and, in that time, I learned a lot about childhood
Mm.
development and what kids need most. And
Mm.
I learned that a lot of the things I was doing as almost like a protective measure, the performance of motherhood,
Yeah.
the shoulds, the way I tried to cook and clean and appear, and, the way I said yes to things so it would keep other people happy. A lot of those things were actually the way I was saying yes to my mom constantly,
Mm.
they were actually
Adding the
stealing
pressure.
me. They were actually exhausting me,
Mm.
so that I didn't have as much of a tolerance for
Mm.
my kids because I was
Yeah.
trying to do everything else.
Everything else.
And actually, the reason I was doing that it wasn't just because I was altruistic.
Mm.
It wasn't just that I was trying to be a good person and help everyone. Those were coping mechanisms that I learned a long time ago to feel safe.
Yeah.
And they were no longer serving me anymore. And they were actually the things that were harming me,
Mm.
and were harming my ability to be the parent I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And that when you spend a childhood living on edge and always anticipating everybody else's need, that makes
Mm.
you a person who does that in adulthood, and someone who can't always listen to your own needs and your
Yeah.
own, like, who am I and what matters to me and what is the priority right now and what capacity do I have? I didn't ask those questions. When someone
Yeah.
asked me for something, unless my femur was snapped, I said yes.
Yeah.
When I saw the way other mothers did things, I didn't stop and go, "Oh, is that for me? Is that
Mm.
something that matters to me?" I would go, "Oh, okay, that's what we do."
That's what I
And
need to
so
do.
I realized, oh, wait, I've never learned to ask myself what I want or need
Mm.
or what my capacity is or what my actual real life is.
Mm.
And when I learned that, I finally started to become honest with myself about, like, what
Mm.
is my actual life? What do
Mm.
I actually need? What
What do I want?
what do I want and how
Mm.
can I change? What can I let go of in order to get the capacity I need to deal with these stressful moments that are going to happen
Mm.
regardless? And maybe it was through reading there's a book called What Happened to You. And
Mm.
the whole idea is, they're talking about trauma in our childhoods and how so many times we ask the question, what's wrong with me? When really we should be asking the question, what happened to you? Or
Mm.
not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you? And that
Mm.
was a reframe that really helped me go, wait a second, it's not just that there's something wrong with me, it's that things happened that made me this way. So
Yeah.
how do I heal and learn not to be this way so I can
Mm.
listen to my own needs and give myself the capacity to be the parent I want to be?
That's really great advice. That's really, really good advice. The point about trying to understand why you are the way you are, what it is that makes you you, the good, the bad, the indifferent, and then being able to go, okay, this is the life that I would like. This is the life that I want. These are the things that's not right with my life. And then being able to go, okay, what's the gap between the two? What do I need to learn? What do I need to know? What do I need to establish is great advice. What advice would you give to somebody, Libby, that is currently going through a very similar situation? I'm very conscious of your time today, but I think it's important to leave our listeners with something that they can cope with, something that they can take away from this conversation that they go, okay, I'm probably getting close to that point. I need to make some changes. What advice have you got for them?
I mean, I would say don't wait until you're at that point. Don't
Mm.
wait until you're absolutely broken. Don't wait until your body forces you to stop because your body will. Your
Mm.
body will make you sick or it will be able to tell you like, hey, you need to stop. You need to slow down. You need to change. Don't wait until you can't function anymore to make a change.
Mm.
It's reason enough right now to do something differently. And you deserve that. I struggle with practical advice because I've always, when I was in early motherhood and in the trenches and is so much needed all the time. People would give me advice and think like, you don't know my life
Yeah.
though. I can use that thing. And so the practical advice I give people now is use honesty. My book is called Honest
Mm.
Motherhood for a reason. Use honesty as a practice. You can do it right now. You can stop listening to this podcast and you can write down a list of what is everything I'm
Mm.
carrying right now. What do I absolutely have to do? What
Mm.
do I feel pressured to do and why? And what can I maybe either outsource, give away, ask for help for, or
Mm.
I say to moms a lot, do a crappier job at. Yeah, you do have to
Yeah.
clean your house. You do have to cook a million meals a day. Can you do a crappier job? Can you do something a
Yeah.
little bit less good? Can you give yourself permission
Give
to
yourself
get
some time back.
to think straight and
Mm.
consciously decide your next step? Because when you're in survival mode and you're on
Mm.
autopilot, you're not always thinking, okay, I'm going
Yeah.
to do this next. But if you can give yourself that little bit of capacity,
Yeah.
then you are going to be able to do that. And so I would say,
Mm.
like, don't wait. Take the time, either write it down when you wake up in the morning, try journaling when you're driving to work.
Mm.
Consciously take time to go, okay, what am I taking on? And what can
Mm.
I maybe change to give myself capacity? Because the world will
Mm.
have all kinds of advice for you, but you're the only one that knows. You're the only one who knows once you slept last night, what your
Yeah.
kids need, what your triggers are. And so give
Mm.
yourself permission to let go and
Mm.
to try and find capacity to figure out your next right step. Because it's not going to happen overnight. You just
Yeah.
need to, day at a time, go, what can I change today?
Today. Mm. That's really great advice. What can I change today that's going to make my life slightly easier? And that thing about not putting the extra pressure on yourself to be perfect, to do the extra things, to show up and things, allowing giving yourself permission to be not on top form, giving
Hmm.
yourself permission to have a bad day, giving yourself permission to go, do you know what? Things aren't perfect. They don't need to be perfect. I just have to get through this
Hmm.
is really good advice.
Yeah.
Libby, tell us about the now. We obviously heard where you've been. What are you doing currently? What's your life look like now? Have you made it out the other side? Is it very similar? Tell our listeners where you're at and what you're doing at the
Yeah.
moment.
So where I'm at right now is my kids are turning 10 and 12 this month,
Wow.
which is insane to me. It is insane. And I haven't even comprehended that they are getting older, but that is happening. And with that comes a whole new season
Yeah.
of motherhood. And so not
Yeah.
only have I done a lot of therapy and made a lot of changes and lived from this ethos of my first job is to make sure that I am okay, to make sure that
Yeah.
I am well, and then I can be the mother I want to be and also the the whole human I deserve to be. So
Mm.
I have this new ethos and my kids are getting a little older. And so that means that life looks so different than it did all those years ago.
Yeah.
And time with my kids is so fun. I love seeing their like humor develop and their personalities develop. And that is so great. I just released a book in the last month called Honest Motherhood on losing my mind and finding myself. And that has that's kind of taken my life over the last couple years where I
Yeah.
share the story that we've talked about today. And so I've been on a book tour. I create a lot of content around motherhood. And so my life looks like this toggling between talking about motherhood and, prioritizing ourselves and healing and then actually trying to live it out in my real
Yeah.
life, carving out time for my family and for my kids. And that's, that's a lifelong journey. I don't
Mm.
ever tell anyone that I've arrived or that I'm completely on the other side. I'm definitely on the other side of the every moment of the day feels like my body is in
Yes.
flight. That's I'm on the other side of that. But it's a constant journey to figure out what is important to me, to be honest about
Mm.
like what stage am I in? What is important to me? What do I want to do with my time and energy? And that's a question I consistently have to ask myself so I don't
Mm.
fall into, oh, look at you've worked 5 12-hour days again, or
Yeah.
oh, look at your, and so it's a journey. But it looks like a lot of fun doing a book tour and writing a book, and then a lot of exhaustion, and then, recovery. And so summer is coming here in Canada, and I'm so excited to spend time with my family and take a break from work and know that I will get back into work
Yeah.
again, and that that's okay, and that not every season is for doing everything.
Yeah, I totally agree. It sounds like you have some nice plans for the summer whenever summer's coming in.
Yeah, just regular stuff. That's one of the biggest things I've learned is that it's not the big moments that is what
Mm.
like, that's not what life is all
Matter.
about. Like, making
Yeah.
space to enjoy the regular little moments and just
Mm.
camping and beach and things like that. So I'm really I'm excited to spend some time resting, and I'm in a place now where I don't feel guilty for rest. I used to be
Yeah.
someone who felt like I needed to earn rest or that I
Mm.
needed to earn time for myself, and now I know that it's, like, a core need, and
Mm.
so I'm in a place where I'm, like, excited to do things for me and
Schedule
enjoy them, and, it feels like a whole new sort of I'm turning a
it.
leaf and excited about it.
No, that's awesome. Your comment about being able to look after yourself and show up for yourself first gives you the best opportunity to support others is so true and so powerful. It's one that I came to probably about 4.5 years ago, 5 years ago, where I realized that I, so much of my life was doing things for other people, for the family, for friends, for the business that I was working in at the time and not showing up for myself, making sure that you can get to that point where you understand what makes you happy and doing more of that is
Yeah.
a very, very rewarding place. And it sounds like you've arrived. Tell us where our guests can find you, Libby, because I encourage everybody to follow your story, get the book. Where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on just about any social media app at Libby Ward or at Libby Ward Official. My website is libbyward.com, and my book is available. Honest Motherhood on Losing My Mind and Finding Myself is available most places you buy books, but that is in the United States and Canada. If you're outside of the
Of
United States and Canada, I do know that it's available on Amazon. So
of course.
yeah, hope that you grab
No,
it. And
I
I also like to tell people I read the audiobook. A lot of people ask, like, "Are you the one that reads it?" And like, yes, I read it. And so that's an accessible way to get it too if you can't get the physical book.
I love audiobooks. I must say I'm a big fan. I do a lot of running. I listen to them while I'm driving. I'm dyslexic, so reading's a bit of a challenge for me in the first place. So my go-to is definitely audiobooks. I highly recommend it to anybody. Did you enjoy the process of reading the audiobook?
I did, yeah. It was good. It was therapeutic. It was nice to read it all in one go, and because I had
Mhm.
sort of like done a lot of editing at different parts, and so it was nice to
Yeah.
read it all in one go. But it was weird reading it out loud for the first time to a man in his 20s who wasn't a parent because he was the director producer at the
Yeah.
studio. Oh, you're learning a lot about my experiences right
Motherhood.
now.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I love it. Libby, as I said, I'm very conscious of your time and thank you so much for being on our show today and sharing your story. I do encourage everybody to follow and check you out. Have you anything that you'd like to leave our guests with today before we wrap it up?
Thank you so much for having me, first off. I would just I would like to leave this conversation telling whoever's listening to this that you matter simply because you're a person. You know, I started my healing journey and trying to get better for the purpose of being a better parent for my kids. And that matters and that's important. But in my journey, I learned that I should have always been my own reason. And you don't have to make the reason that you make your life better for other
somebody
people.
else.
Simply be because you deserve it. And you deserve to know that.
That is a really powerful message. Libby, are you okay with our listeners reaching out to you and contacting you, ask you a few questions if they need to? Yeah, awesome. It would be great if we could keep in touch and potentially have you back on again in the future.
Great. Yeah, sounds good.
Excellent. And now for the legal part. I'm not a registered mental health professional. I'm just some guy who has gone through life, that's dealt with a lot of issues, and that has really wanted to move his life from where it was to where he wanted to go. And along that journey, with my own personal development, with my own growth, I've done a lot of research and studying into what it takes to get us to a better place, what it took to get me to a better place. I've also done a certificate in results coaching where it qualifies me to coach other people in terms of improving their lives. But I want to stress, regardless of whether you go to a mental health professional or whether you go and talk to a friend down the road or whether you reach out to the Feck It No More team, the onus is definitely on you to help improve your life. And I want to thank you for showing up today, for listening, for getting involved. That shows that you care about your growth and your development and getting you to a better place. And I really appreciate the time that you have taken to reach out. So until the next time, I'll be waiting. I'll be available to help, support, as I know majority of our community will be too. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for you showing up.